Today on the show, we have Hampus Jakobsson. Hampus is a general partner at a company called Pale Blue Dot VC. This conversation is to date the longest episode that I've had. It just seemed to keep going, keep flowing. There was so much that Hampus was saying that I really appreciated that he brought to light. The first half of the episode is about climate tech, his perspective on that, on their thesis on investing, how they judge, how they make their decisions of different companies and things like that. But we did get into a conversation about showing up very human to your pursuits and what it means to not get in your own way. And a lot of the things that he articulates are things that I feel very deeply about. So it was a pleasure of a conversation. I expand more in the articles I send out in the newsletter. So subscribe to that. Information is in the description. Thank you to our partners, as always, Craze and Friends, for this beautiful production, and Clean Tech Growth Lab for making this happen. And with that, I bring you Hampus. Oh, welcome to another episode of The Grove. Hampus, welcome.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was containing my my excitement for everything that I have. Apologies for everything that I have read, watched, consumed about what you've been up to. But for anyone that doesn't know yet, if you could just give a brief introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Whoa, yeah, that's tricky. I am bad with brevity, to be honest. I
Well,
think
good thing we have time. This
it's
is a good platform for
exactly.
that.
Yeah, that's true. I can like start by the end. I can say that I'm really passionate and interested about building stuff, and I really want the future to be here faster, but I also want it to be way more human centric. So I think that for me, I think that that ends up being like TLDR. If you want to put me in a box, together with my two co-founders, I run a venture fund investing in super early stage startups that are building stuff that, in my mind, upgrades the operative system of the planet and brings the future closer to us. I kind of view the world as like just this massive machine, and we're a bit unsure what the actual machine is built for. But we have the grid is the largest machine we've ever built, is like part
Mm.
of our whole like neural system. We have the stock exchange, which is also part of the whole like figuring out like what how the body is feeling. We have everything from of course temperatures, but then we also have like logistic network that just moves the vessels around everything. We have this massive machine that humanity has built in cooperation, or sometimes like not cooperation, with the rest of the physical planet, like nature and stuff. And I find it super interesting. Just think about how do we make that machine as like efficient as possible. And I think it's very obvious when you look around that its machine is super inefficient. Anything from just like mass amounts of waste, we're digging enormous amount of copper out of the ground and we're throwing enormous amount of copper all the time, or to the fact that the 21st century we can run everything on electrons that are captured by the sun or wind, which is like at the end of the day just solar energy, instead of just like burning dead dinosaurs that we buried in the ground that have been like fermenting and put crunched together for millions
Mhm.
of years. And when you burn them, it's super inefficient, and we it just feels like when you start looking at the world of a lens of like, if you imagine in 200 years, a lot of the stuff we do are just like going to look so ridiculous. And I think Pale Dot's obsession is really looking at that and saying, how do we upgrade like the whole system? And in that, we don't include health tech and we don't include
Right.
military tech, because I think that those both are I can talk about that at length, but for different reasons.
Sure. So then, yeah. So before we get into the story about Pale Blue Dot and your thesis and how you guys have operated and all of the things, again, very excited. I think from what you guys have been doing for you personally.
Hmm.
There seemed to be, in what I could find, a point where your career trajectory, your personal trajectory, took a turn into climate. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
and again, that's on paper. So from your perspective, was there a point in time where it became more of a focus? Has it always been a focus, and you just reached a point in your career where you could indulge in that? How did that? What was that timeline like?
I think it's like one of those like Hemingway's things, gradually and suddenly. I think that, like, when I was a kid, my family has like a hiking place up north of Sweden. I've always been like, hiking every summer, skiing every winter, being super close to nature. I'm not like the typical city kid. I really enjoy like, being, close and part of nature. When I built my first company, it was never an agenda. I built the first company in 2000 and 2010. It wasn't like climate change, of course, it was a topic then. We knew about it, but I think it was not on my agenda. I was a kid. I was in my 20s. I didn't really think about this. And then I think that after that, I got opportunity to angel invest and started angel investing. I only invest in stuff that I wanted to exist. Like, if somebody made like a super cool casino game, I was like, nah, I don't really care. I don't want to invest in this. But, a lot of it was not climate, but some of it were. And I mean, some of it was clearly climate, but it was also something I would say I didn't like allow myself to do it fully to build a thesis on it. And the main reason is I think that if you look at like 2010 to 2015, climate was clean tech. Clean tech was shit. Like, everybody was saying, oh, this is never gonna work. I was an angel. I didn't care. If I met stuff, people I really loved or stuff I just wanted to exist, I invest in them. Some of those super successful, like, that today you look at and it's like, oh, clearly climate tech. When I did it, I didn't have a thesis. I was an angel.
Okay.
What happened was that I was asked by a fund, Blue Earth, to join when they started up the fund. And they did this crazy event, inaugural event when I joined them, which was called Decentralized and Encrypted, about like not trusting nation states. And it was like Edward Snowden was the keynote speaker. It was like really one of those wild stuff about like, how do we trust
Wow.
sovereigns and, nation states and borders and the fiat currencies and all the conversations I think were really big around that time. On that event, I was super impressed about like just how the fund was able to project itself 20 years into the future. And then ask like, how that comes now. So 3 months after, and I worked with these people, I was just like, when is the next event? And then Kieran, my wonderful colleague at the time and GP of the fund, he was just like, oh, like we're not event people. That event was like a massive, we're not gonna ever do that again. And I said, what are you talking about? That was like the most inspirational. It was super, super interesting. I think we learned a lot from it. And he said, yeah, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I would love to do one, which is like, about synthetic life and how do we create life from scratch. And
Mm.
he was like, that's a cool thesis. So then I built that event, like an invite only 100 people event, got Emmanuel Charpentier, who a year later got the Nobel Prize. And just like, insane cool of just like projecting yourself 10 years into the future of can we create life and CRISPR and all that now is not that strange.
Mm.
And then when that was over, it was like, okay, nuclear, fission and fusion. And then it was like, quantum. And then it was like next. 2019, I said in January 2019, I know what I want to do as next event. I want to do climate change. Kieran and Jason, the two co-founders and GPs of the fund, just went, oof. And I was like, what do you mean, oof? Like, I mean, like creating life from scratch and like fusion energy wasn't like weird. But they were like, yeah. And they were super big climate believers. I mean, both
Mhm.
of them, like, Kieran was a vegan way, like I'm vegetarian. He was like, you should stop eating this. Like, like I just felt, but I mean, come on, climate change, that's a huge thing. So starting prototyping this event in the early 2019, I felt that everything I looked at, like you're curing cancer or like, anything like, like, cryptocurrencies to do X, Y, Z, I just felt like nothing else matters than climate change. And I don't mean that from a Jesus complex, we got to save the world,
Mhm.
but from purely when you look at climate, like climate tech or whatever you want to call it, like the lack of it is just raw dumb. Like like so many solutions, you see them and you're like, oh, this is like 5 times as efficient. And I got so enamored at it, I'm like so into it. And then when this event is like, coming closer and closer,
Yeah.
falling in love with these startups, falling in love with the many of like the people looking at it, then Kieran just sat down with me and say, like, I think I can see we're losing you. And I was like, what do you mean? It looks like to me like you're leaving and starting your own fund. And when he said that, I was like, it was one of those before and after moments. First, I was like, oh shit, you're firing me. And he was like, no, but I mean, seriously, look at like you're so passionate and in love with this. And I was like, yeah. But when he said it, it was like one of those times when just somebody said, oh, I guess you're into her or into him, right? I was
Uh-huh.
like, what? Yeah, you're right.
Uh-huh.
And there was no turning back.
So,
So like mid 2019, I was like, okay, I'm leaving Blue Earth. I'm just like need to set up my own fund. I need to do on climate change.
gotcha. So gradual, suddenly,
And then
2019.
boom. Yeah.
So, so two questions. The first one has to do with it sounded like so during that time period where you were doing event, cool thing,
Mhm.
incredible conversations, were you simultaneously investing? It was
Yeah,
like
yeah, sorry,
investing in.
exactly, yeah, exactly. So like at
Um,
Blue Earth, of course, like my main job was like find awesome companies and invest in.
okay.
But I feel like I am generally one of those people. I'm not an inventor. I'm an entrepreneur, meaning
Mhm.
that I want, like, I think the biggest difference is inventors can just like envision things out of nowhere and kind of create them, not knowing what they're for. I think entrepreneurs want to burn down and destroy something to create something new. And
Okay.
I'm that second person. I'm like, oh shit, this system is so broken. I want to fix it and burn it down and, make something new. And I think that means for me is I have to meet a lot of people with a lot of different problems and a lot of different solutions. So you can call that extrovert. You can just call it insanely effing curious. So creating these events for me was a way to just gather 100 of the intelligentsia and just ask them like, what can we do? And like, what's the problem? And like, we had like the literal founder of IPCC, like David King, who's like he never goes to events, and like he's like the capital TF founder of that
Hmm.
thing, and by like crazy luck, he happened to be the person who came and talked for 20 minutes. There were like 20 speakers, but
Yep.
like he had a 20-minute slot, just talking to David about the like how he'd had for 10 years seen climate change and how he saw it hitting every single part of the infrastructure and the cost for insurance companies and banks and real estate. And just like sitting talking to him when I was setting up the event was like, wait a second, David, but wait, who this wait, who will pay for this? Like, and the insurance costs will go through the roof. And he was like, exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like we have to set up a government body. And I was like, I'm not sure if I believe in government bodies, but I believe in the problem that you're saying.
Hmm.
And then the next person who was working with steel and talking about steel plants and how we're scaling steel plants massively and like how much coal to use, I was like, coal? Wait. And they're still like, yeah, we can use electric arc furnaces, but it's like super complicated. And I was like, wait, what? This doesn't sound like why not? So like, every single person I interviewed, I always build these invite only event. So interview the people coming, who I want to come. Every person I sat down with, I like hung up the video call afterwards, sitting there confused, to me like, this sounds like an opportunity.
Hmm.
Like it sounds like a crazy, just like you need $1 million and then you can start deploying that software to optimize that scrapyard. But I mean, we at Pure signed $1 to $5 million checks.
Yeah.
And then like, called Kieran or Jason. I was like, hey guys, should we invest in this company? And every time we came to this like, mental standstill of them being like, yeah, I'm not sure like, climate tech. And I was like, it's optimizing a scrapyard.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is like if you go back in like early 2019, it was one of those mind blocks. Like I think that these people I think it's like longevity is there in a sense for some people now. It's like some people would just be like, longevity, what's the business model? And I don't know what the business model is. Or like, if you listen to the interviews with AI people right now, you ask Dennis or, Sam or whatever, how are you going to make money? And they say, I guess we're going to ask the AI. And then like people are giggling a bit. We don't know. And I think that's the thing about some of these things. I think that in front of me when sitting there 2019 in February, March, I was more like, this is the largest project humanity has ever faced.
Hmm.
I think there's going to be money in that project.
Well, so yeah, from what it sounds like, you're speaking to, which has been a topic of conversation on the podcast. I mean, extremely recently, because I think it's a trend that's been happening. Is that a lot, and I would love for you to speak on it because I feel like you're much more in the details than I am. But I guess around that time, 2019, 2020, especially during the pandemic, there was a lot of investment in companies that were just green. I guess not
Yeah, yeah.
from
Super
your.
crappy companies.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of money flowing because of this idea of sustainability and climate. And a lot of these companies did not make it to later stages, or there was a tightening. I mean, especially
Yeah.
with the economy recovering and all of this stuff, a tightening of investment on just climate tech companies. So the ones that have survived are the ones that have proved that it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you believe in climate, you can give a fuck about
Yes.
climate change or not. This is going to help your business. This is good financially. And oh, by
Yes.
the way, it is better overall than the existing. So can you speak to that trend? And
Totally. Totally. So like when we started, like, so 2019, I start out to go fundraise for this fund with Heidi Newell, my two co-founders, and literally we're met by three kinds of answers. Like 2019, we're like, either climate change is not real. Like, it's just like, whatever you're doing, this is like a hoax. Number two, it's like, climate change is absolutely real. Um, it's not an investment area. We're going to lose a lot of money in it.
okay,
Or three, that's so nice of you. I really like this. I would love to kind of invest maybe $50,000 in your fund. And I was like, wait, how big is it? Like your fund of fund or endowment? It's 50 billion, but we have this philanthropy where we give small checks to stuff that we think are endearing and cute. Like we have an initiative for capybaras right now. And you just feel like, well, okay. And I think that's how it started in the summer of 2019. Like when I started talking to people there, September, October, I was more like, I guess we're not going to do this fund, right? And then something happened during that Christmas where some people, I would say, family offices in the Nordics and family office in the US and family office in Germany, who were not the family office, like old family office, like, been around for 100 years, but like tech founders, people who had built these like tech unicorns. They were just like, shit, I'm scared about climate change. Like I have a house in Australia, I have a house in like my house in LA is burning, whatever. They were all being like, I think this is pretty real. And because they were entrepreneurs, like when I talked to them about like we can reprogram DNA to make plants that can live in the desert, and like we could make blah blah blah, blah, they would just be like, this is pretty cool. And so they ended up saying like we can join with 1 million and 2 million, whatever. And then pairing up with that, what happened was like we just happened to bump in a couple of endowments and like pension funds and others who essentially were looking and who had burned themselves on clean tech but who had promised that they would think about like ESG. And I think the competition we had were people were saying, we're going to save the world. We don't need to think about the bottom line. We don't need to make money. And suddenly we come along. We had built like Heidi New Ally, whatever it is now, 6, 7 companies. I've angel invested in 150 companies, like, 30 funds. So I'm coming to the meeting and they're like, wait, like you're normal people. Like you're actually here, like you see the bottom line as a thing. And we're like, yeah. And we didn't talk in the impact lingo. We didn't say like
Sure.
people and profit and planet. Like
And
we,
this is
we
back in
didn't say hand
2020,
in hand.
you're saying?
Early 2020, like
Okay.
January 2020.
All right.
So
Okay.
essentially we come in and say we think they're doing rock star companies. We think can build insanely big business, upgrade the operating system of the planet. I think these people are just like, hallelujah. So they take a bet on us and they invest. And I think that the first fundraise there, I think it was very clear that the companies we saw were two kinds of companies. We saw the carbon accounting companies and everybody who's like essentially ticketing software or expense software that, 2010, there was this wave of people who'd like, they whipped together a thing where you can take a picture or receipt and it's great for you to do expense
Yeah.
reporting. They did that within carbon and they said, this is going to change the planet because all going to be regulated. And so many companies came in with either saying regulation will just force everybody to this, or by the way, everybody become vegan. And I think we came in like, of course we looked at that. Like we were not from the future, so we were like, okay, maybe that's it. But what we loved is we met these companies where like we went on a DD call with the customer, and the customer says, I don't believe in climate change, but I love this product. It saves me 20% of my cost. And
Right.
we're like, oh, that's great. That's a great call, right? So I think we started seeing that in like during the summer of 2020 when like we saw the market diverge into like we're going to save the world and like it doesn't matter if we make money,
Okay.
and the companies who were like, yeah, we happen to call ourselves climate tech companies, but we're a bit uncomfortable about actually you know it's a bit complicated. And I think that if you look at like one of our first companies we invested in 3 companies the first week: Patch, Overstory, and Phytoform.
Hmm.
I mean, Patch raised from us first round, and then in September, October they raised from Andreessen. Then March they raised from Coatue, and then like I think it was August, September they raised from Energize.
Okay.
Energize is the only fund who has any kind of climate thesis about that, like energy, if you call it climate thesis. But I mean, Andreessen, they don't have a climate thesis. Coatue, they don't have a climate thesis. And it was so fascinating to just see like one of those first companies just running off and raising like double-digit $1 million, from reputable funds. And actually, what happened is for every time their pitch deck removed burning trees, like it just says this is a marketplace, it's a new kind of commodity.
Yeah.
Like it toned down the climate part and said, we think this is a huge business.
Where do you see the spread now? Do you see people abiding to this? Because I mean, like we're speaking to, it's been
Totally,
5 years since this
totally.
time. So.
I would say that I would say 1 in 100 companies we see are like, we're all going to be vegans, and the EU will add its regulation, and these are the net zero targets. But it's 1 in 100. I would say in 2020 it was 50%.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And I think what we see now is we definitely see, I would say 30% of the things we see are like, you know massive capex upfront commodity output.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to build this factory and out will come natrium like chloride, like potassium chloride, like salt. Um, but hey, it's going to be way better because it's like completely free of pollutants.
Yeah.
And then we look at it and be like, well, the consumer, will they pay $1 per gram? I don't think so. And then you come back to regulation. And I think that that's the thing. I think that's still the complicated part, to respond back to those people and saying, you have to do $10 million investment and you have commodity outputs, meaning you have to scale insane amount of capex to get this. And then they respond, yes, but look at the new blah blah regulation from blah blah blah.
Okay.
This will be
Oh,
mandatory. And we're like,
oh,
yep, there's back again.
great. I am glad that you brought that up because another theme that's very common on the podcast, especially with founders and also people that write policy that regulates, is just speak a little bit to your perspective, which is what you're speaking to is building a business model in response or underneath a piece of regulation, because that's people do that. They go to market
Yeah.
underneath regulation like that. So what are your
I,
thoughts on that?
I think for me, like at the end of the day, I think people do stuff because of status or because they make more money, like humans. I think corporates do stuff because they want to make more money or decrease risk. That's like, these are the four reasons people buy. I think everything else is lubrication. So like if there's like this regulation comes along, or right now we're being shamed if we don't, whatever. I mean, look at, there's so many companies where I think we saw that, of course, the Microsofts and Apples, whatever, are going to do this
Mm-hmm.
because they know that, like going green, for example, and I'm not like, shouldn't put air quotes, going more green, because I think that they know that it's going to be pressure from some of their shareholders. It's going to be pressure from some of their employees. It's going to be pressure from some of their customers. Like, so like, I think at the end of the day, they look at it and say, purely risk. Like, do you think we can, if we, and also, of course, we're using less material is a money saving effort. So like it's controlling your own supply chain and knowing more data where it comes from is a risk reduction.
Right.
But of course, like the lubricant that up there is that, please, Bob, please, Lisa, look into this. Because like we're going to be in the media if we don't think about this.
Okay.
But when they're bringing this up for the board or for the management team or for their boss, whatever, if they say, by the way, I need twice as much money to do it, they'll be like, nah, 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 nah. So I think at the end of the day, your budget is like, you have this much budget extra. Um, but I mean, you probably have to be smart here. Whereas I think if you come in and say, wait a second, we can move all of our diesel trucks to electrical trucks, which means our cost of goods are going to go down quite drastically.
Okay.
But there's a huge upfront cost you have to buy electrical trucks. If you're Amazon, if you're Google, if you're Apple, it's just like, yeah, money we
Right.
have. Can we just lower OPEX, please? So I think that like so many of these large corporations, for them, it's like easy peasy if they just figure out that their operating expenses goes down.
So then, as a founder that is going to market that has a particular business model, what is the correct way to think about regulation? Like you're saying, it's a lubrication as far as going to market. Like you're saying, it's, selling into these corporations. And then second, what's the most effective way to speak about it when raising funds?
I would say like it opens the door, but it doesn't sign agreements. So at the end of the day, if let's say do some ISO certification on supply chains, blah blah
Okay.
blah blah thing, you can email the people like the procurement people and saying, I'm not sure if you're compliant to the new ISO blah blah blah, which comes along now in January. Those people respond to that email. They will be like, yeah, you're right. Like we're at risk. you know. At the end of the day, if you keep like talking about this as a religion
Mm-hmm.
and kind of saying you should join Christianity or like you should join this is great, they would be like, this field preacher is a bit scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you come in and say, do you know if you join this church, you get 10% less tax from the state? They'll be like, whoa, why didn't you say so? This is an amazing pitch for my boss. Like,
Cool.
so like you have to arm these people. And we see a lot of our startups, they're using green, climate, regulation, behavior change, shareholder, employees. They use something as like getting attention,
Sure.
getting into Wired magazine, getting into the newspaper, getting in front of a customer, getting on stage. And they're not using it maliciously. They're using it because they believe in it.
Right. Right.
But at the end of the day, if they're standing there touting on stage that you ought to do this and we should do this and
Yeah.
we are better people will just be like zoning out and checking their phone.
Yeah. Awesome. So, bigger picture question for you, a little bit of a subject change. It seems like pretty much all of your experience has been angel or pre-seed or seed. Correct me if I'm wrong. You also have a speech that you gave, I guess, around like 10 years ago or something on angel investing. So you've been, in the space. Why? Why angel investing? Why is it so important to you? Why have you been in it for so long? Why are you not operating at a different stage of investment, different type?
Yeah, I think it's very simple for me. It's the fact that I love the early stage when everything's possible. I just love, I think it's so exciting when you're talking to somebody and like if you and I said, maybe we should build a train company, that would be super cool. And we're like, we're jamming about how a train company would look like. But if
Let's
you and I are,
do
if
it.
you, it's like, but if you call me and say, I'm operating this train company, I think I can improve my margins with 2% by figuring out how we change our waste paper baskets. I'll be like, I don't care about the 2%. But like, you look at it, if you're Amazon or if you're PepsiCo, those improvements are insane. I
Mm,
mean, there are people who get so passionate about them because if you look at the amount of millions of dollars, that's huge. For me, when somebody talks about operating and improving something with 10%, I feel like why not create something that improves something with 100%?
mm,
And I know, but the thing is that if you think, I don't think it's necessarily smart of me. What I mean is just more like, the passion for me with the unknown
okay.
is so huge. The known is I get so bored. I
Okay.
just like I know what's going to happen. I know that we will have meetings every day. I build a company. I scaled the company from 6 people to
Mhm.
180. Like you have daily stand-ups. You go through the metrics. You set up OKRs. You have an innovation department that think like orthogonally. There's a playbook to innovation and like improving stuff. It's not very exciting. I mean, bottom line is exciting, dollars exciting, everything is exciting about it. But my brain just goes into like zombie mode. But like talking to somebody who says, "Did you know that?" dot dot dot, I just go, "No, no, what didn't I know?" Like I want to know more, right? So like one of the most exciting things I think we allow ourselves to do at Pillbot Dot, and we put a really high premium novelty. Like, I mean, if you look at the number of times somebody asks us, "Do you want to meet Bob?" or if Bob emails us and shows us a deck, the biggest indicator I would say if we take a call with Bob or Lisa, whoever it is who comes in, are two factors. Well, three maybe. Team, like just looking at the team and being like, oh, it's an exciting team, that's an interesting team. This is not number one. Two, who referred, being like, oh, interesting. Like this comes directly from Janice. Like she's super interesting. That's interesting. Like she sent us this. Number one, quirkiness of idea. Like if you look at the idea and we'd never seen it before, we just take the call right away. We're
Hmm.
like, it does what? Oh, I don't know. Like, what is this? We'd just be like, book a call. I need to figure out what this is. So we've taken quite a lot of calls with really, really weird shit that we never thought was. I mean, like Hindenburg's, like massive these like blimps, dirigibles that like monitor like autonomously monitor forests.
Yeah.
We got that inbound, and we just like I think we had a call with him the same afternoon. We were like, blimps. What the heck happened here, right? And like
That's
so
hilarious.
many times when we look at it, we're like, I don't really understand what this is. Like we have to talk to them. So I think that that caters so much to who we are as people.
Okay. So
That's why we're pre-seed.
related to that, and again from the video. So you had a lot of interesting things. Well, interesting to me that I thought about the nature of relationship when you're at I mean, it was specifically angel, but when you're specifically at an angel
Mhm.
stage, where it's a lot more like a partnership, you'd said, instead of more of a mentorship or even an investor relationship, and
Totally.
I'm curious in that, and again, you guys do what stage investing? Pale.
Pre-seed. So like 500K to 2 million.
So do you carry that similar
Totally.
okay.
Totally.
So
I
then
think that we get the weirdest calls from our founders, wonderful weird calls. Like
okay,
I
great.
mean last year I think we were at four weddings, a funeral. I think we send off
Oh,
baby
no way.
t-shirts and stuff for five founders. We get baby pictures. We get told by the founders they're pregnant and have a good interview with them when they should tell the rest of the investor collective. Like we're extremely close with these founders.
Okay, exactly. Can you please just re-outline if anyone I mean, for anyone listening, if you could just go watch the video, it's really cool, but if you could just go over, whatever comes to mind as far as how you approach these relationships and how founders should think about them, how angel investors should think about them, what's optimal. I mean, what you're describing is beautiful. So if you could just
I think
expand
at the end
on
of the day, I mean, like I want to be very frank. Like I sold my first company. I don't need to work. Like I could do whatever I want. Why would I spend the time with people I don't get energy from?
that.
And why would I spend with them building stuff I don't care about? So I think for me, building relationship with super ambitious people and getting to know them as people, as humans, is like, it feels so amazing to me. I mean, I don't like ignore like money making and all. Just like meeting super ambitious people. I think almost everybody. You remember a time you're sitting at a party at a dinner and the person next to you is like, I'm this like novel kind of dentist that helps people do this and that. I think anybody goes like, what? Or like, I'm inventing this rocket that's like, what? And the other person is like, I'm a teacher in middle school. People are like, okay, that's fine, right? It's like, I think we just like, it's such a privilege to be able to just talk to people that are positively crazy. And I think that's number one. I think that it's just like gives so much energy. I think the assessments we ask ourselves a lot of times is like, number one, would we want our kids to work with these people? You know, like when you have a call with a founder, like this founder is amazing, but would I be fine with like my 17-year-old kid working for them? I would be like, I'm not sure if this person is trustworthy. They're going to print a lot of money. They're going to, you know, break a lot of eggs making his omelette. But I'm like, oh. And then some people you talk to and be like, yeah, this person is going to break a lot of eggs and be crazy. But this person would actually call my kid and said, hey, I'm sorry, I don't know where you are. I can see you on Find My. I didn't check into the office. And they would, you know, great, just smart people. Number two, is this like when New York Times, The Guardian, or whatever, New York like goes the full review of this person and everything they did? Would we be like, I stand by it? Oh, did you know that? Like, yeah, we know. I don't think you have the full context. They're good people. This was like, it's taking a bit out of context. Number three, what they're doing, not them, what they're doing. Would you be proud of this existing independently if you're on the cap table? Like when you say yes to those three like questions, like, yeah, I would love my kids to work with these people. That would be fun. Number two, like, yeah, I would stand by them. And number three, I really want this to exist. You've solved lots of the investment equation. Then, of course, you have to figure out, is the market competitive and blah, 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 stuff like that. But I think those questions are the first questions we ask ourselves.
So I think so thank you for that context from the investor perspective. On the flip side of it, as a founder, I feel like it's very ideal to have an intimate, close mentorship like relationship with your investors. But at the same time, I feel like it's very difficult when you're like, I need to find investment, and it's so difficult, for me to find investment for that, not to compromise that. So what do you say to that? Is it more of an idealism, or is it something that's really
no, I think it's. I think that it's like, I think it's so. First, I think that it divides into multiple buckets. I think not bucket number one is that we're so like you and I are building a company now, Blake. We're going to pitch investors. I think the first question we should ask ourselves. Let's go. Exactly. Yeah. First question we should ask: are we building a lifestyle business, an empire business, or are we building an exponential business? Okay. A lifestyle business is like you and I want to be able to take vacation, work from Thailand sometimes, or whatever. Don't raise money for this. You're going to destroy like your summers now. Number two, empire business. You want to have total control on everything. Like, the logo, the design, the everything, the hiring, the firing, the where we have the retail stores, whatever. You're building a supermarket right now. Like this is like investors here. You have to be a bank. You have to promise them a certain amount of money. That's about it. Like how it works. Number three, exponential. You're going to lose control and you're going to lose your lifestyle. Okay, good. Now we're done the first sorting. If you've done the third category, you can talk to investors. Next, now you have to figure out: are you building something which is like fairly mainstream? And it's like explosive growth and up heavy. And it's more like, people know this, but we're going to be the fourth scooter company or whatever. Or are you building something completely novel that like will be quirky, and it's because you intrinsically really believe in this? And you're not quirky for quirky's sake. You just be like, I believe in this so much because I used to build train tunnels, whatever. Like I have thought about this for so long. If you're one of those two camps, I think you can raise money. So like, first of all, make sure you have an exponential potential. Otherwise you shouldn't talk to people. And then when you've done that, are you like, ops, like we're going to, out execute Olympian effort, do this? Or are we going to do something that no one else thinks is sane? Okay. And then if anything else, any about these two, it's probably going to be super hard for you to raise money. If you're doing this, like people agree, it's like what investors call like legible. People look at it and be like, oh, scooter companies. I've seen a scooter company. I get it. I know the economics. Then you just have to over impress people with metrics. Okay. You come in and say like, look, the first customers, we have higher revenue per user than anyone else. We are lower cost of this. And if you're a certain kind of person, if you were like ran Uber expansion for people, you know the playbook. You're from Flixbus, you're from, one of those companies. You just out execute everyone else. You can win. Number two, you do something that you intrinsically believe in. Now your problem is that now you have to find investors that agree with you. Okay. This is kind of like being gay in 2028, like 1980, and you should go dating. Most people, like, you kind of have to, like, in a nice way tell them, like, I think I'm gay, and then the person will be like, okay, I'm not for you. And that means they have to have a quite high volume, or you go to quote unquote gay bars. So like if you just go to a place where like really quirky investors hang out, if you go to like the Hereticon, for example, or you go to the Unruly Summit or whatever, everybody in the room are like, if you pitch them yet another scooter company, they're gonna strangle you. But if you say like we think that we will have handheld fusion power by using blah blah blah, there are gonna be two investors be like, I don't know if you're good crazy or bad crazy, but I really want to talk to you too.
Okay, yeah.
I think every country can be a steelmaker. We can suck water out of if they have seawater. We can suck because energy is going to be free in the future. We agree to that. We can suck seawater out of it. There's some iron in seawater, and we completely turn it into a smelting plant, and we can use
Right.
the carbon in the air, and we can make our own steel. There's going to be one or two investors at this event to be like, "Whoa, wait, like, whoa, oh, interesting." Like
Hmm.
Iceland, I guess, when energy is like, how are you thinking about it, right? So I think that's the thing is that you have to know yourself when you're investing or
Okay.
when you're pitching investors.
Okay.
And I think what people don't do, I find, is that they don't lean into it. So we see so many founders that are wrapping themselves into the lingo that investors want to see instead of wrapping themselves into who they truly are. Like, I mean, we have companies we invested in who are category one that are like, we will, with Olympian effort, do the best last mile delivery company on the planet. Or we will do a bus company with higher margins than everyone else. Or we will blah, blah. Read those decks. We're like, oh my God, we've seen this before. But these founders are our people. We look at the first categories I told you. We're like, let's go on a call because I mean, interesting. Or we have deck number two when we're like, what? I want to talk to these people because the
Yeah.
deck is so clearly weird. And then sometimes those decks, they have like no design. They literally have like the keynote template, white and black. They just write the slides, not like AI generated
Yeah.
fancy images. They just be like raw. This is what I believe in.
Yeah.
Those founders tend to be like rock climbers and people who like biked from east to west coast or whatever.
Yeah.
You talk to them and they're like they have a super strong will of their own and they have thought about this problem. They're so sure it exists. They built their prototype on their own. They signed their first customer or whatever. And sometimes when you talk to them, they're like, "Oh, why are you looking to raise money?" And they just say, "I would prefer to not raise money. I would prefer to just work on this problem on my own for 50 years. But then I realized I can get there in 25 with VC."
Hmm.
We're all being like, "Oh, interesting." The problem is that there are quite a lot of tourists in the game.
Okay.
People who look at what they're supposed to say. They want to tell their friends that they raised 2 million from a famous fund. They want to be in TechCrunch. They want to blah blah blah. So they look at they chat GPT. They talk to their friends. They think supply chains are hot. Maybe we need supply chain transparency. They don't know anything about it. They just try to manufacture a deck. They find a friend who worked at Uber and one who worked at DeepMind. They
Yeah.
bring them in and put them on the team slide. They pitch, and they're good at pitching because they worked like was at Cambridge and Stanford, so they can speak really well. They come there and they pitch the VCs. They will get money, but these companies will fizzle out because they don't know what they're doing. They have like no, either they have to be Olympian on just like pushing the hours, or they have to be super strong-willed and have an internal thing. If they're not, it's like you throw a dart. If you're lucky, maybe,
Yeah.
but like you've never thought about this problem before. You literally just like manufacture your way to the problem.
So with these two buckets, because this visual is great. So with these two buckets, and then I guess a third bucket would be tourists in the
Yep.
space. Right?
Yes.
This is the sea of the activity that's happening. We're at the end of the year, and a lot of different organizations and people are saying, here's the report, here's the climate report, here's the different sectors that are doing this, companies, invest, whatever, all of these things. I want to know what the Hampus end year report is. Like where do you see, based on where you've spent your time in the last year, in the last however many years, like where do you want to speak to? How you could take it wherever you'd like where is clean tech, climate tech? Where are these different solutions that are going into 2026? What subsectors are doing well? These types of things.
I would say like from two aspects. I would say like, I mean, or three. I would say first of all, the ones that are doing well are ones that found customers that like get traction. Period. That's like the only thing I believe in. I
Right.
think I don't believe
Agnostic
in.
from any other labels.
Yes, I think that food and ag is really really painfully hard. Consumer products are really painfully hard. I
Okay.
think that reg tech is painfully hard. But when I'm saying that, that also means that there are going to be quirky startups in that are just like truly interesting. I think, for example, it's really hard to get grid connection for anybody who's doing anything. That is a reg tech problem or gov tech, red tech problem. I think there's going to be an amazing product and a company being built on like, utilities want to figure out a way to like, get electrify their grid. And part of that is adding batteries by private actors. How do they decide where on the grid? How do they give them permission?
Mm-hmm.
It's a super gnarly problem. It's a perfect startup thing. The question is, of course, like how big is the market? How much do you can charge? I think there are going to be so much in things that investors hate that are going to be quirky because you believe something else don't believe in. That's number one. So I think what works is what customers are buying. That's
Mm-hmm.
number one. I think number two, I would say, is that I think that I actually am the funny business of not looking at sectors or
Okay.
theses. So, like, generally, when anybody asks, like, when other investors ask me, oh, what are things you're looking into now? The way I work is I meet a ton of people and talk to a ton of people, read a ton of stuff. And then suddenly I read something or see something that I'm like, wait. And then I'm just trying to unspool that. And that means that maybe I spend six months looking at, I don't know, like geothermal, whatever. Like that's like
Sure.
obviously not what I'm looking at now because it's fairly mainstream. But sometimes I just find something. I'm just like, wait a second. And then I just spend my time and attention on that a
Mm-hmm.
lot, which means that I'm actually not trying to like predict the future by reading reports or thinking that, oh, Europe needs to change the manufacturing industry
Mm-hmm.
or, oh, all these data centers in the US and how will that work with energy? If everybody thinks it's interesting, I actually don't think it's interesting. So like right now, if somebody says, "Oh, we're building a super efficient data center," I'd be like, "Yeah, there are probably 100 of those, right?"
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody said something really quirky, I would be like, "I want to talk to you." Like this is super interesting. I haven't seen many doing this. And the funny thing is that we have this fear at Pale Dot that we will like run out of things, like the patent office back in the day. That oh, there's not going to be more new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, it feels like now we've done that, we've done this. Like 55+% of our portfolio is manufacturing and logistics. And the funny thing is, we end up meeting constantly new things within manufacturing and logistics that are like, not overlapping with our current portfolio and founders. So like, we just find another company where like, oh, and then we like reference our founders, and they're like, yeah, we would use that. Or wait a second, so they would take over after us. This is interesting, and it's crazy because every time it happens, it's kind of fractal that we just when we learn more about it, we just zoom in and figure out there's a space between.
Mm-hmm.
There's a space between we couldn't have done that with like an army of analysts and associates who like map the market.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way we think about it is that we think about it like dating. Like you meet a person and you're like, I want to meet that person again. She was really interesting. I got some energy there. I definitely want to talk to her again. People are like, oh, what made you interested in her? Oh, is she good looking? Is her salary high? Or blah, blah, blah. I would be like, I don't know. I like her mind. I like the way she thinks. Yeah, I don't really
Yeah.
know, but I want to talk to her again, right? It's very similar for us. We have so many calls with founders where we leave the call and we're like, we write the blurb to each other. We're like, anybody want to talk to this company? They do this and that.
Yeah.
And then the responses are almost like, did you talk to them? Yes. Any energy? No. Okay, pass for me as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes we meet a founder where like, there was insane energy, but it's not for me. Heidi or you, do you want to talk to them? There's
Mm-hmm.
something there. They're electric in some interesting way. Those are the people we have a second or third call with.
Do you are there any? I mean, I know you said you don't like to operate within sectors and stuff, which I think is cool and interesting. Do you feel? I mean, whatever label you want to use, is there any? I'll use sector because it's useful for me. Are there any
Yeah.
sectors necessarily that are more primed for unique, quirky ideas that you've seen, or anything like that?
I think the thing is like what I like are like I personally like brutally unsexy stuff. Like long distance transportation, cold storage, yeah, there's like coordination of electric grids and like stuff when you start looking at them, you just go, oh my God, that's so bad. It's so, like this is so boring. The funniest thing is when you go into those industries, I love this thing that happens. Like I remember this so clearly when I talked to Tom at First Data Machines where we invested. He explained like how steel plants operates, how it works and everything. And he was like, oh, and Tom is like wonderful and lovely. And he was like talking about, oh, yeah, this happens and like and everything. And I was like, wait, Tom, I just gotta ask. Sorry, this was a super cool, like, I loved your 10-minute rant about this. But how does it work like now?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, sorry. And I was like, I mean, what you talked about now was obviously like the 20th century. But like, now, how does a steel plant operate like, 2024? And he was like, I just told you. And I was just sitting there staring at him like, but that's like super insanely dumb. And it was like, that's what I told you. And I was like, wait a second. So wait, if I guess what you do, you're just like not dumb. And he says, that's my pitch. I'm just like, wait, so like you mean the status quo is so it's the what? And he's like, yeah.
Huh.
And I think that I would say if you look around in the real world, like the real tech, not startup stuff, like stuff that like the big companies do. If you look at, I would say 50% of all businesses you see on the
Mm-hmm.
planet, you look at them with clear open eyes and you're like, are you insane?
Mm-hmm.
But like if you look, the problem is like a lot of startup founders, they come from having worked at Stripe or like at
Sure.
Google or at Meta or at Apple, whatever. If they come from those companies and like, what do you think Apple could improve? I mean, Apple is full of super modern people that use super modern tools. Does anybody use a massive excavator and blow up valleys? No. So what are the things you can innovate on? It would be great to have home delivered high quality food. Yeah, that would be nice, right? It was super nice if we got that made by a chef. It would come to your house on a bike, super cute. But if you have somebody in mining, they'll be like, do you know what it is to go down a mine? They were like, no. I'll show you. And you can see if you feel comfortable after that.
Uh-huh.
Or you go to farm and you look at like how a farm is run and you're like, wait a second. So you buy all this super expensive equipment, use them like 30 days a year. They're like, yep. And weather makes this really hard. Yep. And then you pay insane amount up front. Yeah. And you have commodity out. Wait, this is like, how is this? Why do we? Oh, we need food. That's why we do it. And the crazy thing is, there's so many businesses when you start talking to them, you're like, forest management. You start talking to those people and are like, you walk around the forest with like a stick
Yeah.
and like look at trees to figure out how big they are. Why isn't drones doing this? And they're like, I don't know. But you're like, but that just sounds really strange.
Hmm.
And like, and so many industries, you start looking at them and you're like, wait a second. Like, I think 15, 20 years ago, I sat next to a founder 20 years ago, and I asked, like, what do you do? And he said, what I do is really simple. I fly very small planes atop very large cities and I film them constantly.
Hmm.
And then what happens is as soon as the police, something big crime happens, the police immediately pings me and I take the pictures and I have the picture data stored on a server. So what happens is that they tell me the address where the crime happened. They figure out what car it is because they can get some of the info. I now scroll back in time and fairly simple and sometimes computer vision aided, go where the car came from, from where it came from originally, where it parked, which means that that's where the lair, that's where the bad guy is. Let's go.
Hmm.
And I was like, that sounds super simple. It's like, it's fairly simple. And I said, like, wait, do you have competitors? Nobody.
Hmm.
Like nobody does this. And I was like, that sounds so simple. Yeah, but you should do how dumb it is now. Like when the police calls, they have no idea where the car came from. How would they figure it out? They go through surveillance cameras for the
Hmm.
whole city. I just have the aerial view of the whole city. It's like super simple.
So if you were speaking to a group of people that said, I want to start a company, I want to start a company, you would just say, open your eyes, and open your ears, just start asking questions, learning about it. I mean, these ideas are everywhere. This is what I'm hearing.
They're absolutely everywhere. And I think the coolest thing is that the strangest thing is that I would advise so many young people to go and work for a startup and like figure out what it feels like when you just cram innovation in and you're doing stuff that no one else can do and you have this go get it mentality, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing, right? I think it opens people's ambitions and possibilities. One of the things I always tell myself whenever I'm thinking about like should do something is just be unstoppable. And I think that's because 20 plus years of startup creating and stuff and then founding and everything just realized like if you realize, oh shit, I need to get a doctor's like thing to be able to travel to
Uh-huh.
just do it.
Yeah.
Like, don't complain, don't just go fix it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that mentality comes from having seen startups. But the problem is, like, if you're 20 years old now and you go and work for a startup, you learn all those tools. But the problems you perceive every day is stuff like how would be a video conference in stereo would be super cool, or how do you make conference rooms, or how do you
Mm-hmm.
get takeaway meals better. Whereas, like, if you take 1 year stint at like agriculture or mining or real estate or any industry which has been around for 100 plus years, you walk around in that and be like, do we do some pen and paper? And they go, yep. And I'm like, but what? But why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like, that's what they teach you in school. And you're like, we can just have an app what?
Yeah.
And I think so. I think that the best thing I would do if I was 20 is I would like go and do the startup journey, but then I would work like 1 year as a fake journalist and like do a podcast about like insanely old industries and go as deep as I can into the mines and go out on the oil rigs and be on the long haul transportation trains. And if you're doing those things, you will just stand there and be like, I have 100 ideas.
Mhm. So these ideas are everywhere, and you need to be unstoppable. And anybody can be unstoppable.
Anybody can be unstoppable. And the weird thing is that your uncle or aunt probably works at a company which is really, really old.
Right, right.
And the thing is, you just ask them, but what do you do when this happens? And the thing is, this is not only in climate, right? I think that is everywhere. Like, if you talk to your aunt who's an auditor, you just ask her, like, I just get it, like, end of the year, you did this. Why
Mhm.
don't, like, and then she just explains a normal day for you.
Yeah.
Feel like, but this must be like you could probably just OCR this automatically, and it would do this for you. And of
Right,
course, you have to proofread. And she'll be like, "Yeah, we can't. We're not allowed to use those things." But you're like, "But why?"
right. Sure.
And I think that's the thing. There are just ideas everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, this is so I'm so excited by this. I mean, that's a cool way of putting that. Along this, I have three final questions for you. The first one just came up. It's related to what you said. It's something I love to ask. Is that, you're speaking. If I was 20 again, if I was 20 again, for you personally, what if you were speaking to yourself back then, given everything you've experienced and everything you believe now? I think what you just said is perfect. But is there anything else that comes to mind as far as inspiring, leading, whatever advice to a younger version of yourself?
I think I was extremely lucky when I was younger to be among. Like, first of all, I was completely restless and I was unstoppable as a person. Like, just like 15 years of that training when I was a kid. And I love to think deeply about stuff. So like I was like insanely running fast, thinking really deep, and just like unstoppable in ways that got me into trouble constantly.
Hmm.
I think the thing that I failed on early on were a couple of things. I wish I would have gone further in early on to go where absurdly ambitious people are, to just like meet insanely ambitious people. If you go to a startup event in Paris, in San Francisco, in New York, in London, whatever. If you go to that event
Philadelphia.
and start to Philadelphia, like if you start talking to these like insanely impressive founders and you just get to like somehow mingle yourself in,
Hmm.
I think that you just figure out like what like insane ambition means. Like you just meet them and you're like, oh my God, I thought my dad, who's a CFO, is really ambitious.
Mm.
But I realize now that this like is something else. Like it's insane. It's like completely crazy. And sometimes you can do it by meeting like PhDs or whatever. You just meet people who are so into their thing that you can't figure out if they're good crazy or bad crazy. That is, I wish I did earlier. I
Mm.
didn't do that. I started a company because I happened to be super, super into rendering, like run graphics to the screen. I
Hmm.
had 5 friends who were all crazy about that. We started a company. We happened to right hit the verge of mobile phones and the scale that the shit out of that company.
Sure.
We were the most ambitious people. And I think the problem is like when you're most ambitious people or smartest people or whatever you want to, the most est people in the world that around you, you should be in new rooms. The second you're the smartest person in the room, change room.
Hmm.
And I think there's so many people that I was like, of course, insecure, thinking, oh, it's comfortable to finally be the most ambitious person in the room. I don't have to have imposter syndrome and feel anxious anymore and compare myself. I wish I would have been like, okay, too bad. Let's
Yeah.
change room. I
Okay.
think that's one. I think the other one, I think I wish I would have given myself permission to be more obnoxious. So I was like, I'm super polite, I'm super kind, I'm like really considerate and thoughtful, which are like, super cute of me. When I was 30-ish and I like sold my first company, when I figured out my second company idea, I was more like, because then at 10 years of just, startup mentality coming
Hmm.
in and scaled the company and got self-confidence of like, nobody knows what they're doing, but some are just winging it more confidently.
Hmm.
That's kind of what I learned during those 10 years. Like, okay, so like, okay, nobody knows what they're doing. Then I just set up, I think I've done 40 podcasts. And what I mean by that is like, I pinged like a mining expert on LinkedIn and I said, hey, I'm doing a podcast about mining safety and security. And I would love to interview you because you come really recommended. This person responds to me right away. Oh, that's amazing. You should like, I'm in, like, yeah, like, of course, right? 10 interviews with different people in mining about mining security. After the 10th interview, I was like, I can't feel a startup idea there. Sold this thing. Emailed all, I didn't have a startup, I had a fake podcast. Emailed all of those 10 people, like Bob, Janet, Ross, and saying, like, I'm really sorry. It seems really tricky to get this podcast to the ground. They're like, it's fine. It was amazing talking to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Did the next thing, ed tech. How do you build technology like widgets and like trinkets to kind of get kids to learn how to code? Into like the Googles and the Facebook and everybody's in that. They were all went on that podcast. They love talking. They have all the experts who work on ed tech. Talk to them. I did like 8 episodes, meaning like deep interviews. The cool thing when you're doing a podcast is you can literally say when they say, oh, what people don't understand about PFAS 200 is that, and I'm like, oh, just for the listeners, Roger, PFAS 200, could you explain that? I have no idea what this person is talking about.
Yeah.
And this person will be like, oh, of course, of course. And they just, they tell me everything about it. And for context here, why is that so important?
Yeah.
And they think I know what I'm talking about because, I mean, I'm doing a podcast about it, but they understand that not all listeners. So they're super nice in explaining it. And if you would simplify that, like if you would talk to a retirement home, how would you explain this? And they would say like, oh, it's kind of like you go into a mine without a helmet. And I was like, that's a great explanation. I have still no idea what they're talking about. But now I have so much more interesting stuff to say. And then I end the interview by saying, Roger's got to ask. If you got to ask 3 hard questions to people in mining, what would you ask them? And we're like, oh, the 3 hard questions. I would, what did I just get? 3 amazing questions for my next podcast interview, which means when I come to that like interview and I say one of these questions, they're like, yeah, it's obvious you know what you're talking about. That's one of the key questions in this industry. And I think it's a hard one. And like super fun conversation, right? And like I think I did 30 plus of those, right? And I've actually churned out, I think I did 6, 7, whatever podcasts that I actually end up publishing and doing stuff about that had not, it was just a hobby I wanted to do. This took me 10 years to discover. The fact that I didn't do this when I was like 20, it's insane. Like, it's so stupid. It took me 10 years to realize. Then so many times I've sent emails to people saying, I'm a journalist, or I'm a student, or I do this thesis project, or I'm doing an interview for my boss, whatever. Everybody's like, of course I have time for you. And like academical journal, like I'm thinking about doing a PhD in your subject. And I'm not tricking them. They get a lot of attention. They love the interview. And sometimes it does get published. But the funny thing is I have met co-founders, customers. I have met like deep interviews that gave me great insights. I've made a lot of friends. It's been amazing. And it took me 10 years to realize. So I wish I was like, even if I felt I'm unstoppable, I think I would have wished I gave myself permission to just like be a bit obnoxious and be like, okay, I'll call this person.
Yeah. Well, thank you for I've been telling everybody in my network about this because this literally this podcast right here. I mean, you're a great example. It's changed my life, and so you're the ability that you're speaking to. I think so many more people should take advantage of. I mean, it is wonderful. So thank you for highlighting that. I think that's awesome. Second for you, what at the moment the biggest hurdle for you? How is it also an opportunity?
Okay, that's interesting. The biggest hurdle for me is that an opportunity. Okay, I'm trying to think about that in a good way. So the thing is that I have just like something fairly personal, which I'm not sure if it answers to your question. I was on this like absolutely insane, crazy somatic trauma camp. I wouldn't consider myself a person who had trauma, like capital T trauma. Um, but I think that if you have imposter syndrome, if you're overachiever, if you're empty inbox every evening, yeah, you know who we're talking about. All of the listeners, including you. I think we have something that's like, maybe we call it not capital D trauma, but some kind of thing that just makes us feel something. And I was at this camp. It was like silent, like it was crazy in many ways. I realized that just how much more potential I have in me that I just didn't fully allow myself to have because of all these things that I end up telling myself. And I'm one of those people where when people say, oh, you seemed like you have, limits. No, but there are thousands of things I don't tell people. Like I like after this camp, I called like 3 or 4 of my best friends and said, hey, I just want to say a thing. I love you. And this friend was like, whoa, where'd this come from? It came from me realizing we've been friends for 20 years. And I always said like, hey, buddy. And like, I truly love you. Like, you mean so much to me. And the person was like, oh, thank you. That's really nice. And like so many times, I think that gone through that camp had made me realize also when I meet a founder, I can just see through all their bullshit now. I've done a whole day board offsite. The CEO started telling something. I interrupted him 5 minutes in and said, you don't need to pitch to us. We're bored. Just tell us what you're scared of now instead. And he looked at me and said, like, is that everybody okay with that? And the whole board was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he said, this is what I'm scared about. Everything we prepped for that board offsite, all the agenda was out. We had the three most things he was scared about. We spent the whole day together, 8 hours, figuring out a plan for next year for those three items. He left the board meeting fairly teary-eyed and saying, I've never felt so much support in my life. And this is amazing. And we all felt, fuck, I want to invest more in this company. That came from me just starting to listen. The 5 first minutes, I just felt, I know what he's going to say. I've read the board material. I've seen the slides. We've all seen the slides. We know what he's going to do. And I just saw in him something, because thanks to this camp, this thing I was at, I could just see him in a way I wouldn't be able to see him. Because otherwise I would be in my mind. I would have been like, oh, is the margins this or that? And whatever. Or I've been starting to think about emails and zone out because it's a bit boring. Now just like I saw him and I was like, stop this crap. Just tell us what you're scared of. So I think that the biggest hurdle is an opportunity for me is going deeper in that thing, learning to be not as much in my mind, being more in my body, and then allowing the people I talk to be in their body when I talk to them. To just be like, I know there's a fancy pitch here. Tell me why you're doing this company. And we say, like, the thing is, Heidi and I, we say that thing now, but I say it with like 200 words per minute and like the podcast dialed up to 1.7, which means that they end up being in their mind. But if I slow down and look at them and saying, why are you actually doing this? You're a super smart person, super ambitious person. You never have to raise money for this. You can do this on your own money. Why are you doing this? If you do it in that way, some people just say, yeah, so I'll tell you the truth. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, finally, it comes out. So I think that's the thing that I'm trying to come back to constantly. And it's definitely the greatest opportunity.
All right. Well, you said at the very beginning of that, you said, I don't know if this answers the question. I think that, and I've been doing this podcast now. This is around the 20th episode. The one I did beforehand was about 80. So it's around 100, individual episodes I've done, which is great. I mean, that's crazy to say.
Amazing.
And I personally believe, off camera with all my circle, I'm very lucky. A lot of these types of conversations happen, but, given my age, we're working through a lot of these things. I've been asking that question pretty much every interview, and there are a decent amount of people that get into it, but that is the most honest answer that I feel like I've gotten, and I really appreciate that because I would like more of that conversation to be more in the normal discourse. I think it is an extremely powerful thing that you're speaking to, and it is a massive hurdle if we're talking about hurdles, other than like, oh, I can't get past this objection from a customer, it is a massive hurdle, and because it's such a massive hurdle, it is a massive opportunity to be able to look within yourself, think, really be present about the things you tell yourself, and then unlock the potential. So, thank you so much.
I would say to that is the weird thing is that also I have practiced this philosophy not unlocked, but previously, and thought I had this forever. So the most common thing I said when I was doing my second company, I was talking to a customer using our product. I was like, okay, Angeli, I've got to ask you a question. If this product rolls out, and this pilot is successful, who would be promoted? Who would be promoted? And Angeli would say, I guess I would be the one promoted. Then I'd be like, hey, Angeli, I really like you. I'd love to get you promoted. Can we do this together? I've just recruited the best, person on the other side. And that's because not I played tricks, because I genuinely liked her. She seemed like an awesome person. I would get to work with her for 3 months and we just scale this in the company. But instead of me asking, oh, blah, 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 I was like, I would love to make this work for you. I had customers where I wanted them to sign when I called them and said, hey, it's 4 days left of the quarter. As everyone, I will have a quarterly review with my board coming up in a couple of months. Is there any way you could just sign this quarter? I know you're reviewing this and everything, but I mean, 4 days, could you do it in 4 days? I would just be super, super happy. I would say 30% of customers would just be like, send over the DocuSign. We're kind of done. I'm sorry, I didn't want to screw up. I get it. Let's make it this quarter, man. Let's have a good board meeting. And there's crazy. I asked them as human to human because they know I will have a board meeting and they know what it means. So they're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I fucked around. Let's just sign it this week. So there's so many times I've practiced this, just being a human with person. Just slowing down for a second and seeing them where they are. And they'd be like, yeah, let's do this. I had a founder the other day. We had a call and we joined the call. It's the middle of the night here. They're in West Coast US. Joined the call. I'm supposed to talk about his product. My co-founder is in love with his company and wants to invest. I'm supposed to go on this call and figure everything about them. I join the call, and he has a picture here on the wall behind him, a photograph. I look at it and say, I'm really sorry, I don't want to ruin this call, but is that Iceland? Is that Aftavatn in Iceland? He was like, yeah, it is. It is Aftavatn. Are you serious? Like, well, how do you know? And I was like, wait a second. Went to my Google Photos, found the picture that I took when I was there and hiked in the middle of Iceland on like in a 4-day crazy hike, shared screen, shared the picture with him. And he was like, oh my God, same picture. And I was like, yeah, it's like, it's like, I'm not in the picture as that, like, you're in your picture. And he was like, that's insane. We spent an hour in the middle of the night talking about hiking, nature, like semi-religious experience when you've hiked for 3 days.
Yeah.
He ended that like, and then we tried to squeeze in about the product, but it was like midnight. My brain was melting. I woke up in the morning. I got a text from the guy saying, I would so much want to work with you. I took a screenshot of that picture and sent it to my co-founder and said, I'm sorry, I never asked about the product, but like, I guess the guy likes us now. I now went on an update call with him a couple of days ago. Same vibe. I'm just like, I really want to work with this guy. And he says, I really want to work with you guys. People say, how did you win the term sheets? I just saw him as a human. I was just like, have you been to Iceland to hike at Aftavatn? And he was like, yeah. He never shared a deck. He never talked about the product. We just felt, I want to work with you. And I think that I wish more people just slow down for a second and actually thought the opposite, which is, I don't want to work with this guy. And they stopped wasting time. Stopped having associates to run around to kind of events and meet hundreds of startups to pitch to their own management. Just be like, take the calls yourself the first 5 minutes. Do you want to work with them? No. But then just say, I think we're not for you. I'm sorry. And I think there's so much to that.
Yeah, I don't think there's no introduction to this question. I'm just curious because all of this does it for me. But with all of this, for you, what inspires you?
I think that like ambition inspires me insanely. But I would also say that there's something really weird with, I feel like kids of a certain age inspire me insanely. And what I mean by that is not like, oh, kids are really cute when they're 7 and say cute stuff. They are cute and say stuff. But the thing is that people that are like 15 to 20, I know they're not kids, maybe, like, what you want to call them. But these people, they inspire me so insanely. Like when I meet a person who's like 16 and they show me something in the way they're using ChatGPT or whatever, I just feel like, whoa, like it's just super cool. Like I have every quarter I one shot a game. I open one of the tools and I try to just see how complicated game can I one shot and create this year or this quarter. Like now you can one shot a flight simulator. I showed that to a friend. He was like, yeah, that's weird. Didn't say anything about it. Then his kid contacted me that same evening and said, now I've played your flight simulator for a bit. It's really funny. Can you send me the prompt? And I was like, yeah, sure, man. I posted the prompt. I was like, no, send it the prompt. And then he got back to me and said like, hey, here's the link. I clicked it. He had made another flight simulator game and I played it for a bit. We chatted long. I met his dad completely randomly a couple of days later. And I was like, oh, I played like his like flight simulator. He was like, flight simulator? I was like, wait, I've bonded pretty closely with your kid now. Haven't you?
Yeah.
Like it's insane. I showed another friend's kid Strudel. Strudel is a programming language for music. And like I'm so in love with it. I'm constantly trying to build like, synths and stuff in it. I showed it to this like friend. His kid is like, what is he? 17. He sent me a URL in the evening and I clicked play and I was like, whoa, this is super cool. His mom, who's my friend, never seen it, doesn't care what it is. I think that's the thing that keeps me so inspired with like 15 to 20-year-olds. They just go, let's try, man.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, I don't have time. You have as much time as you want. Like that's also the thing that I think people misunderstand is one of the weird things is that we don't have time. Like the thing about time, which is so weird, is because time is like the fabric of life. It isn't the river we swim in. It's not a resource. You don't run out of time. You don't have much time or little time. It's like, it isn't the river. We are the river. Like now exists now, and now that's gone. So the cool thing is like when people say I don't really have time, what they're saying is I'm not really here, or it's not by priority. So the cool thing is if you just change that to realize what I want to do now, And what's my priority? You can learn how to code today. You can set up a podcast today. Like, you can do whatever you want today. And I think most grown-ups have just become so sclerotic and so stale and so afraid about being different and weird that they're really boring.
Well, I guess very quickly then, this is something because it's very important in the discourse in my group of friends is that time aspect and that priority aspect. So if you could just summarize that of what you had just said. So it's not that you don't have time. It's about what you're choosing to prioritize at any given moment.
Yeah, it is. And it's so weird. I think that like people think time is a resource, like money is a resource. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can run out of it. You can stuff. Time is literally like time just happens. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like you are the river of time. And if you chose to change your sample rate, like you can just be like, let's just be more in each part of this moment. That means you see people more. Or you can tell yourself, I right now want to direct all my attention to this thing. You can do that. Like time doesn't pass. Like just you are the thing that age constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing is that I think people kind of misunderstand that you can save time or, like, or like postpone something. The thing is, you're not the same person tomorrow. Like, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. Like, I think it's so strange that people are, oh, I'll do this when I'm 30. You don't know if you want to do it when you're 30.
That's right.
Either just stop saying that expression. Say, I don't want to do it. It's just like don't give yourself like excuses. There's no optionality. Like either you do it now or you don't do it now. That's like exactly what you can choose. And I think there's so many people that create these like, oh, I would love to go on a Vipassana retreat. I think I'll do it in a couple of years when I have time.
Right.
Do you think you will have time in a couple of years? So the answer is either saying I don't want to do it now or I want to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it is. I have a friend who did this really funny thing. We had this conversation 5 years ago, and he so agreed with me. And he got back to me and said, I'm writing a list of things I will never do in life. And I misinterpreted him as like, oh, things you want to avoid. He was like, no, you don't get it. Things that are like, I would love to rent a car in San Francisco and drive to New York. But I don't want that on my to-do list because I won't do it. I get too afraid and thoughtful when I think about it. So I added to my list of things I don't have to think about because I'm never going to do them. But whenever I'm thinking, maybe I should do this, I just look and it's already on my not to do list, which means I'm never going to do them. So I don't have to think about it anymore. And I thought it was such a funny concept because, like, stuff that you think, oh, I want to do this, but you don't want to do them. So just stop thinking about them.
That's interesting.
Like, students that are in uni and they say, oh, I wish I took a gap year and like worked in Bolivia.
Yeah.
Well, next year's coming up. Either do it then or don't do it.
Right.
Like, it's just like,
Them.
yeah, just like stop saying I think I will. Just do or don't. I mean, Yoda, there is no try.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it or don't do it. And I think that's the thing about grown-up people is they're so boring because they have so many I ought to do or I can't do or like I'm not really like don't talk to me about that.
Well, speaking of time, speaking of priorities, speaking of doing it, thank you tremendously for giving an hour, a huge chunk of your evening to talk about all these things. Extremely grounding conversation, extremely inspirational, energizing for me. If anyone else felt the same, what's the best way to follow along with your story or get in touch?
Email me. It's probably the easiest. Email me, or I used to say follow me on Twitter, but I think nowadays Twitter is like, filled with trolls mostly, right? I think that I haven't had the energy to build a personality there. I think LinkedIn, sure. I don't connect with you on LinkedIn. That feels manufactured. Just like, email me. Just
Right.
email me and say, hey, like want to talk and we'll figure out a time to talk.
That's right. Don't think about it. Don't put it on the list of things you'll never do. Actually email Hampus. He will
Yeah.
respond.
This is the thing which is so weird. Every year I speak for students in different kind of universities.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, just email if you want anything. And seriously, because I've been here anyway. And I say a couple of things criteria. I say if you're asking me to review your thesis, don't do it. If you want me to read your whole startups, but if you and I just say but I'd say any of these 5 things, just ping me. And I might just respond. I respond, but I respond really quickly. The funny thing is of a class of 500 plus, I get 2 emails.
Tragic.
And it's so crazy. There are 690 people who'd be like, oh, he doesn't have time for me. Or they think I can't help them, which might be completely legit, right? But it's so weird, just send an email. I got an email just the other day from a person asked a very specific question about plastics. I forwarded it to the person I know in the world who knows most about plastics. He responded saying, I'd love to have a call with them. They're completely wrong about this, but I want to have a call with them if you want to. I connected them and said, this is Christian. He's one of the people in the world who knows most about plastics. And the student goes on the call with like probably the best person they ever can speak in the world. Took me 3 minutes. And I built a better relationship to Christian because like I like him. Now he will remember me slightly more because I,
Right, right,
got,
right.
so like networking is good. I don't understand. There are probably 50 people in that class who thought, oh, I wish he could connect with somebody who does that. I'll be like, just email me.
Yeah. Well, short of the story, just do it. Email
Just do it.
them.
Yeah. I mean, you emailed me out of nowhere.
That's
Like you emailed me,
correct.
it's like, can we do a podcast? I read your email. I was like, short and sweet. I was like, sure, let's
Absolutely.
go.
Well, and to be fair, those are all I get a lot of these responses from my friends when they say things. They're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't reach out. Maybe I shouldn't. I emailed one time, they didn't get back. Shouldn't follow up. Things like that. But you won't ever know if you don't have time. You would have told me, I guess, or you
Yeah.
just would have responded.
I would
Whatever.
have said love to Blake, but I can't do it. Or sometimes like an EA would respond saying, Mr. Johnson can't make it right
Yeah.
now, or it's completely silent.
Yeah.
Did that cost you money or pain? Not at
Yeah.
all, right? So it doesn't matter.
Well, I'm glad it worked out the way it did because this was awesome. So thank you
It was
so
great.
much. I'm excited to stay in touch, see where you go. Yeah, that's it. There's so much happened. Thank you so much, Hampus.
Thanks for doing this, Blake.